I'm going to share my screen and just sort of give you an idea about what I would like us all to do for the next 2 hours or so. Everybody see my screen okay? Okay. Now, I haven't been on this side of the Zoom before, so I can't see chat. Can someone tell me how to see chat at the same time?
Yeah, so you see that little like green bar that's above you?
Yep.
View options.
Chat, got it, thank you. Perfect. Okay, so there we go. Okay, and now I need to do that again, sorry. Chat, there we go. Okay, so first thing, the schedule. This was originally scheduled for 3 hours, but again, I think everyone's a little tired, so I thought we just use 2 hours to hang out. There'll be a break from 6 to 7, and then Laurent, Juniper, and I have a few closing remarks. So what I wanted to tell you a little bit about today in the first hour, and then the second hour will be more interactive, is to tell you a little bit about this workshop, the Proteus workshop. And hopefully the Proteus workshop will lead to the Proteus Institute, which I'll also talk about in a moment. So I'm going to just sort of give an overview of what Proteus is for the first 25 minutes here. Nick Cheney is a part of this project. He couldn't be here today, but he sent along a video, and Juniper's going to play that for you at 4:25. Mike Levin, our first keynote speaker from Tufts, he's going to be here at 4:45 to give the biological perspective on this whole idea. That'll close up the hour, and then we'll move on to brainstorming and planning for those of you that want to get involved. This is an open science type project, so hopefully some of you will want to participate. So this is part workshop, part advertisement. Obviously, this is the last workshop of the conference. I'd like it to be very informal. You've heard enough talking heads talking at you. So there's few enough of us here that we can treat this very informally. Please stop me at any time and just unmute yourself, ask a question, throw in a comment, try and make this very informal and interactive. Everybody hear me okay? All good?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so let me tell you a little bit about the origins of this idea. So here in the US, the biggest funding agency is NSF, the National Science Foundation. And in October of 2019, they put out a call for proposals for National AI Research Institutes, or NARI. Like in the EU, funding agencies here are very keen on acronyms. So NARI is the program. And I just copied and pasted this out of their call for proposals. What they're asking for is for people to propose the construction of an institute. And as it says here, an institute is supposed to enable multidisciplinary, multi-stakeholder teams. So multi-stakeholder means not just scientists, members of the public, government, industrial partners, and so on. So they're looking for large, diverse groups to team up and work on multidisciplinary problems. And these should focus on larger scale, longer time horizon challenges in what NSF calls foundational AI and use-inspired AI. So foundational AI is make better AI, and use-inspired AI is use AI to try and tackle and solve other problems. They would like these institutes, if NSF chooses to fund them, to also help develop the next generation of AI researchers, and also basically the workforce in general, people who are conversant with data science and AI and all things compute and data and so on. And of course, as well as solving all of our big problems. So these are very, very big programs. Specifically, these NARIs should serve as a national nexus point, and we're interpreting this as international. Hopefully there's some people here from outside the US. For collaborative efforts spanning universities, federal agencies, companies, nonprofits and foundations, and so on. NSF is pouring a huge amount of money into this program to help to try and accelerate the transition of AI innovation, so making better AI to drive the economy, basically. So very, very big picture stuff from NSF. So given that idea, I started to come up with an idea of how we might start to build something like this in our community. I think the artificial life community is an ideally suited group for tackling some of these problems. So I'm here at the University of Vermont. I work mostly on soft robotics and evolutionary robotics, and more recently on computer-designed organisms, which we'll talk about in a moment. So I invited 3 other people to join me on this. One of them is Professor Melanie Moses, who's at the University of New Mexico. Many of you may know Melanie. She's doing some amazing work in A-Life, but in particular in robotics. I also invited Nick Cheney to join us on this and head up the machine learning side of hopefully what will become the Proteus Institute. Also, many of you may know Nick has done some cool work in evolutionary robotics and more recently working on some very cool machine learning projects. And then finally, the 4th PI is Mike Levin, who again, you probably know from Monday's keynote and can do some amazing things with biological systems. So we're trying to cover evolutionary algorithms, robotics, machine learning, and biology. And our 5th member is, of course, Proteus himself. According to who you ask, Proteus was the Greek god of sea change. So the basic idea for Proteus is he or she or it never has the same form and is continuously changing. So our temporary title for our institute or byline is Intelligence Through Change. I think Mike illustrated this wonderfully on Monday, that organisms are not static things. They are a group of cells that are in an uneasy alliance with each other, and they are constantly jockeying for position and influence, constantly changing. And as we all know, most of our technology is not that way. All good so far? Okay. So in writing up a proposal for NSF, I invited 26 of my friends to join me. I just told you about Nick, Michael, and Melanie. Here are the other people that at the moment have offered up some time, but not funding if we get any funding. You may recognize some names on this list. You may be a name on this list, or you may see your advisor's name on this list. Clearly, we've tried to bring together a group of very multidisciplinary researchers, some from within the field of artificial life, some with 1 foot in this field and 1 foot in another field. Okay, so after the call last October, I put together what's called a planning grant, and the planning grant was submitted by Melanie, Nick, Mike, and myself. We requested $500,000 for 2 years, and the idea of a planning grant is you would, if you get this planning grant, you have $500K in 2 years to lay the groundwork for proposing a full institute. Yesterday, we heard back from NSF, and their answer was not no, not yes, but maybe. They asked for some more. They asked for some more information, and this was good timing because today is the workshop, one day on from yesterday. What NSF was asking us for was more details about what we are proposing, and I'm hoping that in the next hour and a little bit, we can actually start to pull together some of those details together. So bear with me. Being an optimist, if we send back some more details to NSF, hopefully if they say yes and fund our planning grant, it would start this September and would run for 2 years until September 2022. A year and a half into a planning grant, you are expected to then prepare and submit an institute proposal, which, as you can see from the numbers here, is much larger. So they're interested in people not coming, cold calling and suggesting an institute from scratch. They want you to sort of start to get the airplane off the ground and spend 2 years planning and devising and demonstrating that an interdisciplinary institute around your ideas would make sense at a large scale. And again, I'm hoping we can talk about how to actually prepare such a thing today. Okay, Again, assuming we get this far and do submit something, NSF says yes, that would start, the planning grant would end 2 years from September 2020. The Institute grant would start and it would run for 5 years. And obviously at this scale, this would involve many, many people, many different people. And I'm hoping some of you, again, assuming we get that far, could participate in this venture. Any questions so far? Again, I don't want to just run on. If you've got any questions or comments, please jump in. Okay, so along the way, I'm hoping to hold a Proteus workshop at each A-Life, and this is obviously the first time we've done this. Like this conference, this is a bit of a meta experiment, so bear with me. Okay, so enough about the logistics. What's the idea? So obviously everyone here at Artificial Life, we are inspired by living systems. And what I'm hoping we can focus on in Proteus is the longevity of living systems. So without a restart, life has been running for 4.5 billion years. And I've asked Mike to tell us a little bit more at 4:45 about how life manages to just keep going. In contrast, most of us, myself included, we have a great idea. We sit down, we write some code. In our case, it's an evolutionary robotics experiment. I'm going to pick on one of Nick Cheney's evolutionary robotics experiments here. We code it up, we run it for a few days, or if we're lucky, a few weeks on a supercomputer, get all the results, write up the paper and submit it, and then start all over again. So what about all of this evolutionary innovation that we see in our artificial life systems? How could we find a way to transfer or distill out things that evolution had discovered and not have to restart our own experiments from scratch, or better yet, give a little bit of momentum to new A-Life researchers that are getting started? Can we avoid this pattern in our field of basically starting over from scratch and reinventing the wheel? So there's a partly conceptual challenge here and also a logistical challenge. Just for those of you that are interested, this is Nick's work on morphological innovation protection. He ran this on NASA's Pleiades supercomputer for a couple of weeks. I don't even know what the carbon footprint was on this experiment. A lot of great science came out of it, but again, we sort of had to start from scratch all over again after we published these results. So this is related to something that's a challenge, not just in A-Life, of course, but in science in general, reproducibility and replicability, right? We all have our cool ideas, we work on them, we report on them at a meeting, we hope that they inspire someone else and someone builds on our results. But we also see in our field and a lot of other fields, people reinventing the wheel over and over again. There's a lot of this happening in the AI field. And a lot of it is simply because it's very difficult to build on computational innovations discovered by others in the past. There are attempts to deal with this challenge, and I'm picking on Dave Ackley here. I hope he doesn't mind. Open-ended evolution. This is an attempt to try and basically keep evolution going. OpenAI Gym. This was sort of a common platform, or it's envisioned as a common platform where everyone can carry out experiments in the same set of virtual environments and make it easier to compare one experiment against another. There was a very large attempt in the EU, which is still going, which is to try and simulate mouse brain. It involves hundreds and hundreds of researchers, very large data, very large compute. Another attempt to make sure that we're not all reinventing the wheel, and all of our intellectual effort is merging and trying to build something beyond the sum of just our individual parts. Some of you may have heard of OpenWorm. This was another attempt to do so. Lots of other open science projects out there. A lot of different goals in the open science community. The one that I would hope that we focus on in Proteus is this idea of giving some momentum to those entering the field. They're not starting from scratch. How do we give that push? So related to this idea is crowdsourcing, which has been around since the 90s. Some of you might have remembered the old screensaver SETI at home. Ken Stanley's Pick Breeder, another great example. This is an attempt to bring a whole bunch of people together to work on a scientific project. The DARPA Red Balloon Challenge was another example. The video game Fold It was a way to try and get people to help solve the protein folding problem by playing video games. A lot of interesting ideas there that maybe we can draw on. So this is from the LHC, the Large Hadron Collider, which differs from crowdsourcing, and it also differs from a lot of open science attempts in the following way. You have a large number of people that are collectively working on a number of different experiments. Some people are actively engaged in the intellectual side of this. Other people are involved in actually building the nuts and bolts of this. Administrators are in charge of the spreadsheets and keeping the money going. Here's sort of the gold standard for doing science at scale. How could we start to do that in the artificial life community? How could we all be pouring our efforts into a common goal, which might be something like open-ended evolution, or some of the other cross-cutting themes that we're all interested in? So I wanted to try and situate our vision here at Proteus, before Proteus even exists, about where we're really trying to go. So what you can see in this sort of conceptual space here is we have 3 dimensions. So we can ask in any given field or even research project, what are the number of people that are actually involved? And how novel or how new or how paradigm shifting is the science that group is working on? So for example, I would argue that crowdsourcing sits in the upper back of this cube. There are large numbers of people that pour compute into a given project. And a lot of those projects are sort of new science, tackling, the protein folding problem in a brand new way, or tackling the identification of galaxies in a brand new way. But this point lies to the left of this cube, because the 3rd dimension here is, among all the people that are involved in this common enterprise, how many of them are contributing not just compute or, Where's Waldo type pattern recognition things, but they're actively involved in the science as well. They're not just passive participants, they're contributing cognition and not just compute. So if you think about this 3rd dimension, I would argue that a lot of the large scale ML research that's going on at the moment is front right top. And what do I mean by that? Well, if you look at the AI community as a whole, there are a large number of researchers that have poured into that field because there's a lot of exciting things going on there. A lot of people involved, and all of those people are actually publishing papers and contributing ideas to the field of machine learning and AI. But again, with respect, I would argue that some of the ideas there are not that novel. They're incremental approaches on backpropagation of air, or following gradients in a more efficient way. Why are so many people able to work on machine learning? Because a lot of the infrastructure of that field has been commoditized. So TensorFlow, Keras, there's a lot of these software packages out there that make it very easy for someone who's new to the field to dive in and not reinvent the wheel. They're not writing a neural network from the ground up. They're getting a push from those that have come behind them, and they can get very close to the bleeding edge in a relatively short period of time. Assuming, again, that you're going to work within the neural network paradigm and framework and not try some of the crazy things that we try in the A-Life community. So not quite there. Our field, again, with respect, I would argue, is not quite where we want to be either. We have a lot of people in this community that are posing very interesting, crazy, and potentially paradigm-changing ideas. We're all here, we're all publishing papers, we're all contributing something, but as a whole, the field of A-Life is very small compared to the field of machine learning. Why is that the case? I would argue one of the reasons for that is, again, we end up having to reinvent the wheel. Many of us love cellular automata, game of life, physics engines. most of my students, at least I can speak for, when they start a project, they want to start from scratch. They start with an empty physics engine, or they code up the game of life from scratch and go from there, which is great from from an educational point of view, but it takes them a long time to reach the bleeding edge and make new contributions. So I'm hoping that if a bunch of us can get together and start to build some of this infrastructure, we could grow the size of our field, start to move vertically in this conceptual space, continue to work on the crazy and cool ideas we work on in artificial life, so move towards the back of this cube, and make sure that everyone is contributing intellectually to this problem rather than just contributing compute or trying to fit their ideas into the ideas or software infrastructure of someone else. So that's kind of where I'm hoping this institute can go if we can get it up and off the ground. And I'll talk during the brainstorming session about some ideas about how to actually do that. But for now, I'm going to turn the floor over to Nick's video. And just keep in the back of your mind as Nick speaks, and then when Mike joins us, the idea here is how do we keep something running for a very long period of time? So open-ended evolution, not starting from scratch, continuously exploring new ideas. Okay, so I will stop sharing my screen for now. And while Juniper is queuing up the video, if anybody has any questions,